This is Landsborough, one of the most historically significant townships on the Sunshine Coast. Our job was to unearth the cultural histories of this township and then work on ways to express those cultural histories as part of a streetscape program that was being undertaken by the Sunshine Coast Council. Our starting point was to do a deep dive into the history of this town using local resources such as the Landsborough Museum and the incredible collection of historical literature which they had here in this place. The project began with deep engagement with the community through a series of facilitated workshops which were conducted by the Sunshine Coast Council. We then did a deep dive of research into the local area, cultural histories, local stories, the history of the town from Indigenous times through to modern day. So through the research process and also through talking to a number of locals in the community, we identified certain themes for this place, such as the significance of the railway, such as the relevance of the timber history of the town, and a whole bunch of other personal stories. So we had to sift through those themes and those stories and work out which ones could find expression in the placemaking work. We then gathered that history, which were collated into a report, and that report also identified the visual language of the town and what kind of language might be appropriate to express those historical and cultural themes. We then moved on to a fairly typical design process involving early sketching and moving on to detailed certified drawings ready for construction. We were then able to work with our suppliers in terms of builders, artists, blacksmiths and locals that we were able to bring our designs to life into the streetscape. That gave us an opportunity to select exactly the right timber, exactly the right materials and exactly the right products to give us that really highly detailed, fine-grained outcome that we wanted. So there was an incredible story about how they rolled the pub to its current location from a few hundred metres away, pulling it by bullocks and rolling it on logs. And so we grabbed that little piece of history and we created a bench seat outside the pub today, which speaks to that history, which is actually built on solid timber logs, same as the logs they would have actually rolled the pub on, and using a wonderful piece of slab of timber which would have been milled from a species of tree which was once grown in this local area, and of course also speaks to the logging history of this town. So this wayfinding sign here not only tells people where they are and how to get to certain assets within the town, but on this side of the sign there's QR codes which, once scanned with your phone, will open up stories either in video or in audio, which explain a number of historical stories told from the point of view of people who remember these things firsthand. And we worked with local company Sound Trails to help produce those stories for this project. We came across a great local story about how one of the original councillors, when he didn't get his way, he would storm out of the meeting, and legend has it he would blow the lantern out on the way and leave everybody else sitting in the dark. So we decided to capture that piece of history in the streetscape by working with a local artist, Simone Eisler, and she created this wonderful piece of brass art which will be embedded in the streetscape, and it will be accompanied by a little piece of information on a signage panel which tells that story to anybody who goes past it. So for future generations, that little piece of local history is captured and resurrected. Because Landsborough has such a huge history when it comes to logging and transport of that logging to other areas in Queensland, the streetscape furniture that we design and build here speaks to that logging history, being built from ironbark, which is a species which would have been grown and milled locally, and they're stacked up as if they're waiting for transport to Brisbane or transport to another market by train. And some of the details on this furniture here include historical references to some of the early settlers and founders of this town, as well as elements that were made by a local blacksmith, again tying back to local blacksmithing history here in Landsborough.